Robert, being Robert, he was a person. He liked to help people. He was a kind soul, and he decided he was going to leave Monsanto and go into the RUC. So Robert went off in 1972, and Robert trained in Enniskillen, then was stationed in Glenravel Street in North Belfast. Sadly for us, on the 15th, going into the 16th of July in 1972, I remember on a Sunday morning, I was lying, it was a sunny day, the sun was coming through the crack in the curtains, and my sister came into the room, and she went over to my big brother, Terry, who was sleeping in the other bed, and I heard her whispering in his ear, Terry, and she was crying, and I was 10. As soon as I heard the words, "It's Robert, he's been shot," it was awful, and the tears flowed, and it was an emotional, absolute roller coaster and nightmare from then on. It was an incident was phoned in on a forecourt of a garage. There had been some sort of a break-in, or alarm had gone off, and they needed the police to visit. Now, if you think about that one thing on its own, those guys were going out not to visit any harm in anybody. They were going out to help people in a nationalist area, and Robert volunteered. He was off duty. He volunteered to get into that police car, and he was in the back seat. So they went to the place where the alleged incident had happened, and there was an ambush set up there. And when Robert's patrol car came past, they opened up, and Robert was sitting in the middle of the back seat, and he was shot. He went unconscious, and he didn't regain consciousness, and that was it. He passed away. As a 10-year-old in the town, I can remember shortly after the incident happened, we had to get extra security on our house because some people took it upon themselves to come and shout obscenities. It wasn't easy for a 10-year-old to look at that and to, just get on with things. I suppose my life took a different direction at that time, but because of the way my mum was affected by Robert's murder, she wouldn't countenance me going to either of the schools like Dalriada or Coleraine Inst, which meant a bus journey. She had already lost a son, and she was so fearful that she was going to potentially lose another. Those things had a huge impact. It changed the way our dynamic was, and certainly it changed my mum's life forever. She never got over it. However, what it didn't do, it didn't encourage her to encourage us any feeling that we should go out and do the same on our neighbours in the nationalist community. It makes me very, very sad whenever I see things like the funeral that we see on TV just yesterday, and I see young people who didn't live through the Troubles, young guys who are walking side by side at a coffin of a man who's in his 60s, the old brigade now, and those young men are being indoctrinated with warped vision. So a question I would ask is why is it always pushed into the minds of these young people to continue on where the previous heroes have left off? Heroes I use in inverted commas.
The parked at the side of the church, and outside the church that day there was 2 junior football teams. So they walked with this bomb through a crowd of junior footballers, right past the greengrocers and into the face shop. And before they could get putting the bomb down, the bomb exploded, killing one of the bombers, seriously injuring the other. It was a naked sectarian attack, and this was confirmed by the police.
Well, I can remember, Gary, that day. I mean, I was on the scene within probably 15 minutes, and I can remember looking at the bomb, and one of the things that really struck me was how that the roof of the building was still hanging by a thread, really. And yet, people like yourself and people like our good friend here, Jim Werner, who joins our feed, I mean, you were all in under that roof, and I mean, you were selfless because you weren't really caring about the building falling on you when you were digging through the rubble. Can you maybe tell me a wee bit about doing that? I mean, what did that feel like to be digging through and finding body parts and bodies?
It'll stick with me till the day I die. But there was another almighty crack. But what it was, as you mentioned, the roof had just managed to stay up, but it was the crack of the beam but everyone thought it was a second bomb and started squealing. And everyone till a man that was inside the building that day just stayed with no thoughts for a second bomb. And you were digging and you were finding things that nobody should have ever found. The police and the firemen and the emergency service just hadn't arrived at that time when some of the stuff was found. You were just trying to cover it up with your t-shirt, or you were taking your own clothes off. There's many bombs that went off across the UK and Northern Ireland during the Troubles, but very, very few places was hit like the Shankill Road. If you take it less than a mile from the original first bomb, would have been a furniture shop in the 70s, to the Mountain View Bar, which is what maybe a stretch of road about a quarter of a mile. There was 6 bombs went off. It was all targeted at the Shankill community by the IRA, and a naked sectarian campaign, basically.
What really annoys me at the minute is that how they're permitted to get away with rewriting history, as if, on one hand, here we have these Irish freedom fighters who were fighting some sort of honourable war, but this is the reality.
I lost my brother in Claudy in 1972, 31st of July. Claudy is one of the controversial killings in the Troubles. As you know yourself, 1972 was one of the worst years in the Troubles. And there was a priest involved in it. The Northern Ireland office, they tried to hide the priest, and they communicated with the Roman Catholic Church, the Irish government, to try and hide him, put him somewhere away safe. There's nobody who's come forward and said what part they played in this. This is why, at the present minute, some of the Claudy families are heading down a legal route, John, to get answers to these questions. That is why Claudy is so controversial, because it involves the Roman Catholic Church, the Northern Ireland office, and Martin McGuinness. Martin McGuinness was invited to meet the Claudy families. He never, ever turned up for it. We will never give up. My father died, John, 4 years after losing his son. My mother passed away there 3 years ago, never getting answers to her son's death. I hope this day, I pray, that I'll be able to see the end of this and get the answers for some of the Claudy families. The questions, John, you know this, would need to be answered. But I hope I live long enough, John, to get these answers. If I don't, I have another brother to take my place.
I was 21 when it happened. It was our first tour. Well, it was my first tour of I think our 18-month stint ended up being about 2.5 years. So it was towards the end of our just over 2-year tour when we got hit. We were meant to be going down to South Armagh to help the Royal Engineers cover the engineers in, to actually rebuild all the super tankers down at South Armagh. So we got given an extra long weekend just to go and see our families before we actually went down to South Armagh. So it was just there. We went home and come back, and we were going back from the airport back to camp, and we were all in civilians, in a coach which is the same colour as the Ulster bus. And then we got diverted onto the A5 up towards Ballygordy. I actually got comfortable with my legs up on the seat in front of me because I thought I'd get about half hour's kit before we actually get back into camp. And at first I thought it was like we had a big accident, like we hit something. I got knocked out. because I come round then and I couldn't move because I was trapped underneath the back axle. I was just screaming out. All the blokes just actually lifted the bus up off me, off the back axle. And then I got dragged out and I got put up onto the road, and I laid in this girl's lap. I didn't realise that there was kids helping us, giving us first aid. All our clothes were everywhere, and they were actually picking up bits of clothing off the road and actually putting it over our cuts. People say that we're the heroes. We're not the heroes. We're just out there to do a job. It's the actual people who live over there, not the terrorists, not the IRA lovers or anything else. They're genuine people. They're the heroes to me. You know, they are the heroes because they've actually lived through it.
It destroyed our family. My mum aged overnight. My dad turned to the drink. It was a very, very hard man to live with. He was an ex-policeman. It turned my dad into a nasty piece of work. I couldn't wait to leave home. My sister left home at an early age, and I think it's only been probably the last 30 years that I've really got to know my dad, because from 82 up until 1990, my father turned into a monster because of some of his acts of that day. I knew of the IRA, I knew of the terrible things that they were doing over in Northern Ireland, and the people of Northern Ireland, I've always said, deserve better than people who just go about discriminately putting bombs wherever they wish and thinking they can put their will onto good people, and that's throughout the UK. I think slowly I'm getting myself back together, but this is a long time on. This is 39 years later.
You're a victim, a real life victim. You probably are traumatized and re-traumatized by some of the actions of these people even today, and their lack of remorse, I guess, for what had happened. I mean, David, what exactly are you fighting for? You know, is it truth? Is it justice?
Well, I guess I would have, see, as a reaction to what happened to us, me and my family, my mother and my younger brothers, we all moved to London. So we were sort of out of the picture in our formative years. But I returned as a young man, and I looked around and said, you know, who killed my father, you know? And how is my father being remembered, or is he just going to be forgotten completely? You know, a footnote in the history books. And then as I made more and more inquiries into what happened to my father, I said someone should be held to account, and I was thinking along the lines of, yes, someone in a court of law being found guilty. So, you know, that's where I would have been coming from. In more recent years, like it's 37 years this year since it happened. I'm not so much interested in someone serving a prison sentence, to be honest, at this stage, but it's more to just to have someone held accountable in some form, whether it's in a criminal or civil court, or there's a public inquiry. I know there's other methods like coroner's court and so forth. It's just to have someone held to account, so it should be remembered in the history books of what actually happened on that day, and there could be no muddying of the waters. I mean, for years, what I call the Provisional Republican Movement, which includes Sinn Féin, would have spread the malicious rumours that my father was actually killed in a friendly fire incident, and it was all covered up by the authorities. So that's a constant lie I've had to deal with for years. You know, so that's where it's just getting that truth out there. I reckon the sacrifice my father made, so that we don't have we don't get to a point like where you have elected TDs walking around Dáil Éireann actually saying that the Provisional IRA armed struggle was legitimate and nobody actually countering them. Well, I'm here to say, hold on, what about my father and the Young Garda and the others who were killed? the other members of the Irish security forces and civilians. You know, their lives mattered, and you know, you'd be spitting on their graves if you don't stand up and speak on their behalf when these people make their ludicrous claims. The Army, in collaboration with the council, put up a lovely memorial plaque for my father, a memorial stone, I should say, and it's lovely. But only with a short distance away is a memorial to an IRA hunger striker, Kieran Hertzson. So every time I stand and admire my father's stone, but then only a matter of yards away is a memorial stone to a man from the organisation that murdered my father. So, like, I'm reminded every time I see that. I'm also reminded, like last year, I had the president of Sinn Féin. She said the legitimate armed struggle was justified, and that if she had been a bit older and had lived in Northern Ireland, she would have joined up as a volunteer. And for me to hear a leading Irish politician say that was re-traumatizing for me.
We were coming off the Tower of London Guard. So with the Tower of London being so far away from Chelsea Barracks, we had to get transport. We couldn't actually physically march back. However, the Buckingham Palace detachment, they actually were on the coach as well, because we call it a wet dismount. While it was raining, you have to get the transport back. You can't physically march back because the rain will ruin your equipment. As we got to Dewberry Bridge Road, luckily or unluckily for us, the lights changed in our favour. So we beat the Buckingham Palace detachment coach onto Dewberry Bridge Road. The idea being is that we could get our weapons back into the armoury, we could get changed, and my brother was waiting for me. My brother also served in the Irish Guards, and we were going to go and watch Everton against West Ham. Obviously that didn't happen. As we turned into Dewberry Bridge Road and we passed this laundry van, the IRA had set it off by remote control. We're talking about nails and bolts. I don't know if you're aware, but what they'd actually done, somebody had taken the time to bend some of the 6-inch nails into boomerang shapes, so bent them in half. So when the explosion went, it was the idea that the nails would spin through the air and rip through people, causing as much injury and death as possible. So as we come and we pass the laundry van, obviously they set it off by remote control. So I was really badly injured. A 6-inch nail was buried across my head here, but luckily enough didn't penetrate my head, but it was embedded into my head. The top of my nose was hanging off. One of the officers who visited me in hospital said it was like looking at the top of a boiled egg. As you take the top of a boiled egg off, that was my nose. My face was smashed to pieces. I've got a concrete jaw in. I had a 6-inch nail, penetrated my neck, went through my body and got stuck halfway in and halfway on my back. But luckily enough for me, it didn't touch any of my vital organs. So I've been really, really fortunate. And then my left hand was up against my face. So obviously I'm on the coach coming back, and I've got metal in 3 fingers, wires in 3 fingers. I've lost the top of my little finger and I can't bend 2 of my joints. Not only that, I had a big char glass went through my right eye, which has rendered me blind in my right eye. And the blast being so loud and me being next to it, my eardrum was completely shattered. Now, you can get a perforated eardrum, which is the size of a pinhole. However, my eardrum was obliterated. So St. Thomas's Hospital built up another eardrum for me, made up from membrane from inside my head. So I am extremely lucky to be here, and every day for me is a new start and a blessing, because other people obviously aren't here any longer.
As I say, I mean, we didn't think for 1 minute that anything was going to happen. We thought we were going to get a free day off work, you know. And then, as I say, I was sat on the wall, and I jumped down off the wall, and as I turned around, that's when the bomb went off. And I actually thought the bomb was in the building, and later found out that the bomb was behind the wall that I was sat on. So how I got off that before it went off, I don't know. And then just pandemonium. The building just came crashing down on top of us. And instinctively, the thing to do was to cover your head. But then, obviously, I felt an almighty thud in the bottom of my back. It's like somebody had really punched me hard in the bottom of my back. And I just saw people running, so I thought, well, that's what I've got to do. I managed to get up onto my feet, but I couldn't get even 2 steps away. And I just froze and I couldn't move. Two people came on either side of me and started dragging me off. And then the police took over, and I was outside Lloyd's Bank, but they couldn't move me any further than that. And then one of the police officers actually took whatever was in my back out my back. And then a bomb disposal guy came down, and he said that there was a bomb inside Lloyd's Bank, and that they'd move away from the scene. So the police responded, "We're not leaving because, we're not leaving him." And his response was, "Well, leaving because he's dying anyway, And obviously hearing that wasn't a very good thing, They couldn't get an ambulance into me because the place was all sealed off. And eventually one of the police officers went off and brought an ambulance in with the crew. He said that they would come in and get me. And then obviously I was rushed into Manchester Royal Infirmary.
Okay, so we're here in Tullyhomon village, just outside Kesh in County Fermanagh, and we're here on the eve of the anniversary of the Enniskillen bomb. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that there was 2 bombs in 1987 when the IRA, they tried to blow up what was a Remembrance Day parade. Now, this little village, I mean, it consists of 1 street, and it is on the border of Donegal, Pettigo, just looking down that street and across the river. This is where the Northern Ireland meets the Irish Republic in terms of the Donegal border. And in 1987, what actually happened was there was a bomb that was placed here that was bigger, more large than the Enniskillen bomb itself. We all know what happened in Enniskillen whenever the Enniskillen massacre did occur. But the reality is that in here in Tullyhomon village, if that bomb had went off, well, who would it have blown up? Let's just explain. And there was a handful of military veterans that was here to remember their dead, the war dead, and also there was some boys' brigade and some girls' brigade that was here, as far as I know, and also there was a pipe band. Now the reality is that within the boys' brigade and the girls' brigade, there was a huge amount of children that was here on that day in Remembrance Day to remember the dead. And the reality is that if that bomb had went off, well, the world wouldn't have been talking about Enniskillen on that day. The world actually would have been talking about Tullyhomon.
Down at Tullyhomon was an attempt to murder school children. Children who were attending a Remembrance Boys Brigade. Just children, scouts, whatever, other kids, just from schools, primary school kids, and Republicans attempted to murder them as well. You can never forget that. Horrendous. The thought of even doing it is horrendous.
Incredibly, the bloodshed in the border country could have been even worse. As the dust settled, it became known that Enniskillen was not the only parade in the IRA's sights. A cross-border unit had also targeted a Poppy Day ceremony just 20 miles away in a tiny border village called Tullyhomon.
The target at Tullyhomon would have been the Boys Brigade, the Girls Brigade and the band, and a small number, maybe 3 or 4 members of the security forces who, in uniform, there to lay a wreath.
But the Boys Brigade and the Girls Brigade consists of little children from the age of 6 upwards.
Yes, but in the eyes of the Provisional IRA, they were legitimate targets.
What children of that age?
The purpose of the attack was to attack the Remembrance Day, the establishment, and the community in Fermanagh.
The bomb was 4 times the size of the Enniskillen device, but it didn't go off. A tractor is said to have driven over the command wire, thus preventing carnage that may have eclipsed Enniskillen.
Now again in Tullyhammon, what you'll notice is that the main street is actually just behind us, just literally behind where the camera is here, just a few yards from me. But if you look down this street and you look to where the far grey building is with the white cornerstones on it, yeah, that actually is Donegal, and that is within close proximity to Tullyhammon. That is where the Irish Republic actually is in relation to Tullyhammon in Northern Ireland. So it was quite easy for those people on that day to run a command wire to try to actually to blow to smithereens the people that were here remembering the war dead on that day. If you would just like to zoom down and show exactly how close that this is.
Standing at the wall, children holding hands, people getting ready, they're all waiting for an old man with a memory, a comrade's gone away, everybody gets together on Remembrance Day. When the wild wind came without a warning, just a sudden flash of light, many there were taken, husbands, children, and a young girl felt her father's touch, and her dying let the so-called patriots see what they have done. I let them wake up in the morning to another day of pain. I let them feel the endless heartache that never goes away. I let them hear the voice of millions that said it on that day. I am ashamed to be Irish on Remembrance Day. Standing up, children hand in hand, another year is over. Perhaps we understand that words of love are stronger than words of hate. Let us not forget on Remembrance Day. And whatever you believe in, whatever flag you wave, let us not forget on
The building was not searched. I don't know who made that decision, whether that decision was made by RUC headquarters or who made that decision. But the building should have been searched. It's in close proximity to the cenotaph, and obviously the bomb was placed in behind the wall, and the whole wall, once the bomb went off, it flew out across the street and out across the people, murdering people. The VIPs appear just shortly, a few minutes before 11 o'clock, and you have all sort of a mixture of ex-service members, pub members of the public, children, all sorts of people from our society. They're all here gathered round. Every one of the footpaths around here, right round the cenotaph, is full of people. And you can just imagine the scene there at the wall. Crowds of people just lined across the footpath, and the bomb goes off and the whole lot comes out across. Brutal.
I mean, did the IRA on that day, did they come across the border, or did they live locally, you think?
Well, they didn't do this without help from local people. We all know who he was, and we know that McGuinness and his team, his comrades were behind him. I was here at that memorial when the actual Senate, or the new memorial was presented, and it had all the names inscribed upon it. Came here in a forklift and was taken away in a forklift. No sooner the service was over, it was taken away. It's really sad. The memorial has to go. You know, it's been too long without a memorial in place, and it needs put where the bomb went off, or as near as possible to where the bomb went off.
And to this day, I don't think anyone's ever been brought to justice over it. Is that right?
Well, as far as I'm aware, no one has ever been interviewed. And I'm getting that information back through my own sources, IUC officers. I don't believe anyone was ever arrested, but no one has ever been brought to justice. I fear that no one will ever be brought to justice, but time will tell. But with the phony peace process that we have in place at the moment, it's a case of you know, who has been putting pressure on who to stop investigations being completed. You know, that's the way it is in Northern Ireland.